Hey guys, how's it going? It's Jack here, also known as Marley G, and today I'm going to be giving you a bit of a tutorial on how to make an FM frequency modulated bass in Serum. Um, Most Serums won't look like this one. This has got a skin on it. Frequency modulation is kind of a scary thing to people, but it's really quite simple. It's pretty much how you listen to radio and all that sort of stuff. It's one signal being affected by another in the same way that when like broadcasting stations send out a signal to get it to your radio antenna, it has to be carried by what they call a carrier signal, which is just a specific way it's encoding to get it into your vehicle. And that's at a certain frequency. So they call that frequency modulation. Anyway, so this patch in Serum sounds something like this. So you get the idea. More of like a plucky kind of bass. But yeah, anyway, let's get into it. So just going to initialize the patch here. And the first thing we're going to do is work out our first envelope here. So this is our volume envelope. And so what we want to do is just bring up the attack. If you bring up the attack to about 10 milliseconds, you don't get as much of that clicking noise when you play your sound. Sometimes, if your attack is too short, when you play a note, you'll get this clicking sound. You want to bring your sustain down a little bit, just around here, and the decay just to pretty much to personal preference. You know, you can kind of cater this sound to what you want, and that's the whole thing with FM synthesis is just experimentation and seeing, you know, what you can come up with, and then increase the release a little bit. And then what we have to do is open up our second envelope, and we're going to use this to control the level of our noise oscillator. So we're going to just bring that pretty much the decay all the way down to about 180. So it's a very sharp attack, and that's going to give it's going to give the bass that impact that we've somewhat gotten rid of by increasing the attack in our volume envelope. So we're going to turn on our noise oscillator. It's really, again, personal preference which one you like to use. The J106 is a really nice one. The high pass chorus is a really nice sounding noise oscillator. The noise sample. You bring the level all the way down, and then drag our envelope 2 onto the level of the noise, and then just bring that down a bit. Alright, and now we're going to turn on our sub oscillator, and we'll leave this as a sine. It's the cleanest sub layer you can have. Turn it down an octave and go directly out. So now all the processing and stuff we do later in the effects won't be hitting the sub layer, and we'll get this really nice clean sub layer that's not influenced by things like reverb or anything like that. And now I guess now that we've got everything, the framework set up, we can move on to the frequency modulation. So to set it up, you know, the real guts of this patch, we're gonna have to use both of these oscillators. And the cool thing with FM synthesis is that you don't need overly complex waves or you know, wavetables or anything like that to create cool sounds. So for this example, we're just going to use 2 sine waves, and it's important to note that we're going to be carrying oscillator B will be our carrier signal, so we don't actually need to hear that at all. So you can turn it on, but just bring that level all the way down. At this point, what we're going to do is go into this warp menu, and click where it says off. And we're going to go all the way down to FM from B. And now, at this point, what we're going to get is something that sounds a little bit like this. So that's what you should have at the moment. And once you start increasing the amount of warp, so when you start increasing the amount of frequency modulation from our oscillator B, you can start to really hear the difference that it makes in how it's and how it's modulating the wave. So we'll just play it, and I'll mess around with this little knob, and you can hear how the sound changes. So yeah, it's pretty cool. And at this point, it really just depends on what kind of sound you're going for with the amount of FM, the amount of warp you put on it. So, and the beauty of it is you can pretty much go for whatever kind of texture you want. You don't have to. It's not as finicky as trying to find a nice wave to modulate and all that sort of stuff. You can really get into the nitty gritty with the FM. So yeah, that sounds pretty good to me. We're just gonna turn up the voices of Unison here to kind of thicken the sound up a bit. Bring the detune down a bit so it doesn't sound too distorted or too not what you're going for. So you can hear a massive difference already, just with those voices of Unison on. And then at this point, what we're gonna do is we're gonna pitch shift our first oscillator down 1 octave, and then we're going to pitch up our second oscillator another octave. So you get these really cool kind of characteristics that you don't really find in many other places. So that's one of the benefits of messing around with FM synthesis. So at this point, all that's really left to do is finalize the patch, and we can do that by firstly we can make it a mono. It's you don't want heaps of clashing in your bass. If you accidentally press the wrong key or any release kind of seeping into the next keystroke. And then we're going to move on to our filter. So we can enable the filter by pressing this little button here. What type of filter to use, it just depends on what kind of sound you're going for. I like the MG Low 18, just anything in the 18 range. What that does is just changes the slope, how steep the slope is of the cutoff, of the frequency roll off. So 24 will be a lot harsher than say a 6, but for these kinds of bass plucky sounds, you do want that really drastic kind of pullback. So I usually go for an 18. It's not too drastic of a filter, and it's also got a bit of room up there. Don't need to run it through oscillator B because this level is down. You can't hear anything from oscillator B, so then it's just like that. We will select the noise, just so there's a bit of variation. So when the filter opens up at the start of the pluck, so we're using this envelope. The filter opens up, you can hear that noise, just briefly, and then it goes away. So we're going to put that on there. And as you can see, it's going left and right. So to fix that, just head into your matrix and go under type, and then hit unidirectional, and then it'll only go in one way, this envelope on this cutoff. So we want to turn the cutoff pretty much all the way down, and then bring your envelope modulation to pretty much wherever you want. It just depends on how much of those the high parts of the sound that you kind of want to let through. So if you play around with it, you can kind of cater to whatever you want, really. At this point, the only other thing to do is go into your FX, and there's a few different things you can do. You can add distortion if you want. You can EQ it even. You can EQ this oscillator out of the range of the sub, so it's just a bit cleaner. But what we're going to do is we're just going to add a multiband compressor, which will just thicken that sound a bit, bring it out, give it a bit more drive, that sort of stuff. And then the last thing we're going to do is give it a little bit of reverb. And obviously, it's a big no-no to put reverb on a bass line, so we're going to do a low cut, pretty drastic low cut, to get the reverb out of those sub 100 hertz frequencies, so that we can get a nice clean reverb on those mid to highs. So yeah, you end up with this real thick sound, all using FM modulation, frequency modulation. So it's a really easy technique to use. It doesn't take a lot of effort, really. It's just understanding, how to route it and everything. And once you get to this point and you've got kind of the framework, you can just mess around with the frequency modulation, the warp, until you get a sound that you like. You can try different different shapes in the wavetable. So you try square wave, you can get heaps of cool different sounds just by experimenting a little bit and playing around, and even experimenting with oscillator B, because the way that you have an oscillator B will also influence your main oscillator. So yeah, I'll play that all together now. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I hope you have fun kind of exploring FM synthesis and figuring out what it's all about. And I'll try and get some more tutorials done soon for you, so you guys can mess around with a few other cool things within Serum. Thanks again for watching. See you later.